In a time when an entire nation had turned its back on God, one man stood firm. This is the story of Elijah, a prophet whose faith was as fiery as the miracles he performed. Welcome. And today we're diving into one of the most dramatic and powerful narratives in the Old Testament. Our story begins in the northern kingdom of Israel, ruled by King Ahab and his notorious wife, Jezebel. They had led the people to worship a false god named Baal, filling the land with idols and corruption. It was a dark time, but God was about to send a messenger to light up the darkness. That messenger was Elijah the Tishbite. Imagine the scene. Elijah, a rugged man of the wilderness, strides into the royal court of King Ahab. He doesn't mince words. He looks the king in the eye and delivers a terrifying prophecy. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, he declares, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Whoosh, like that, he pronounces a divine judgment upon the land. A great drought, a punishment for the nation's idolatry. And as Elijah prophesied, so it happened. The skies over Israel shut tight. The sun beat down relentlessly. Brooks and streams that once flowed with life began to dry up. The once fertile fields turned to dust. Crops failed, and the specter of famine loomed over the kingdom. King Ahab was furious, searching everywhere for Elijah, the man he blamed for his troubles, calling him the troubler of Israel. But Elijah was nowhere to be found. He had vanished, guided by the hand of God. Where did he go? God told Elijah, "Go east from here and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there." So, while the kingdom starved, Elijah was miraculously sustained. Twice a day, morning and evening, ravens, birds often considered unclean, brought him bread and meat. He drank from the brook, a solitary figure, sustained by God's direct provision in the heart of the wilderness. It was a profound lesson in trust. In a world spiraling into chaos, God was demonstrating his ability to care for those who are his. But as the drought worsened, even the brook Kerith dried up. God's plan for Elisha was not over. He then sent him to a foreign town called Zarephath. There God told him he would find a widow who would provide for him. When Elijah arrived at the town gate, he saw a woman gathering sticks. He asked her for a little water and a piece of bread. Her reply was heartbreaking. She said, "As surely as the Lord your God lives, I do have any bread only, a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." This was her last meal. The end of the line. But Elijah, speaking with divine authority, gave her an incredible promise. He told her not to be afraid. "First, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have," he said, "and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. Put yourself in her shoes. A stranger asks for your very last bit of food, with a promise that seems impossible." It was a monumental test of faith, and she passed. She did as Elijah had told her, and the miracle happened. Every day she would go to the jar, and there was always enough flour. She would go to the jug, and there was always enough oil. For over a year, she, her son, and Elijah were fed from a supply that never ran out. God's provision was not just for the prophet, but for a humble, obedient, Gentile widow as well. But another tragedy struck. The widow's son fell ill, and, after a while, he stopped breathing. In her grief and despair, the widow cried out to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" Her faith was shaken to its core. Elijah was deeply moved. He took the boy from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. There, alone with the lifeless child, Elijah cried out to God, "Lord my God, have you brought tragedy even on this widow I am staying with, by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried out, "Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." It was an act of desperate, raw faith. and God heard his prayer. The boy's life returned, and he began to breathe. Elijah picked him up, carried him downstairs, and gave him back to his mother. "Look," he said, "your son is alive." The woman, her face streaked with tears of joy, looked at Elijah and said, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth." Through life, death, and resurrection, God had proven his power beyond all doubt. After 3 long, dry years, God spoke to Elijah again. It was time for a confrontation. God commanded him, "Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land." So Elijah set out. The meeting with King Ahab was tense. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" Ahab spat. But Elijah was unfazed. "I have not made trouble for Israel," he retorted. "But you and your father's family have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals." Then Elijah laid down the ultimate challenge, a showdown to prove once and for all who the true God was. He told Ahab to summon all the people of Israel to Mount Carmel, and with him the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who were supported by Queen Jezebel. The stage was set. On one side, 850 prophets of false gods, backed by the monarchy. On the other side, one lone prophet of the Lord. Standing before the assembled crowd, Elijah's voice boomed across the mountainside. "How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." The people were silent. So Elijah proposed the contest. "Let 2 bulls be brought to us. Let the prophets of Baal choose one for themselves, cut it into pieces, and put it on the wood but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull, and put it on the wood but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire is God." The people agreed. It was a fair test. The prophets of Baal went first. They prepared their bull and began their ritual. From morning until noon they called on the name of Baal. "Baal, answer us," they shouted. They danced and leaped around the altar they had made. But there was no response, no voice, no answer. As noon approached, Elijah began to taunt them. "Shout louder," he said. "Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." Goaded by his mockery, they became more frantic. They shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. They continued their frenzied prophesying until the time for the evening sacrifice. But still, nothing. No fire. No voice. No one paid attention. Their power was a sham. Their God was silent. Then it was Elijah's turn. He called the people to come closer. First, he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down, using 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel. He dug a trench around it, arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he did something that seemed completely counterintuitive. He ordered the people, "Fill 4 large jars with water, and pour it on the offering and on the wood." They did it once. "Do it again," he said. They did it a second time. "Do it a third time," he ordered. They did it a third time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. There was no trickery here. Everything was completely waterlogged. With the sun beginning to set, Elijah stepped forward and prayed a simple, powerful prayer. It wasn't a frantic shout or a wild dance. It was a calm, confident appeal to the one true God. "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." The response was immediate and terrifying. The fire of the Lord fell from heaven. It didn't just light the wood, it burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and it also licked up the water in the trench. It was a supernatural fire, a divine display of overwhelming power. When all the people saw this, They fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" The contest was over. The people's hearts, for a moment, were turned back. Elijah then commanded the people to seize the prophets of Baal, and they were taken down to the Kishon Valley and dealt with, cleansing the land of their corrupting influence. With the spiritual battle won, it was time to address the physical one. Elijah went to Ahab and said, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." While Ahab went off, Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees in a posture of intense prayer. He sent his servant to look toward the sea. The servant went and looked. "There is nothing there," he said. 7 times Elijah sent him back. The 7th time, the servant reported, "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." That was all Elijah needed to hear. He knew God had answered. He told his servant to go and tell Ahab to hitch up his chariot and go down before the rain stopped him. In a short time, the sky grew black. With clouds, T-wind rose. A heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The great drought was finally over. The land, parched for 3.5 years, drank in the life-giving water, a symbol of the spiritual refreshment God offers to those who return to Him. The story of Elijah is more than just a collection of stunning miracles. It's a powerful testimony to the life of faith. It teaches us about courage in the face of overwhelming opposition, obedience when God's commands seem strange, and complete trust in God's provision, even in the bleakest of circumstances. From the ravens at the brook to the endless oil and flour, from the raising of the dead to the fire on Mount Carmel, Elijah's life shows that our God is a living God, infinitely powerful and deeply involved in the lives of those who follow Him. He is the God who answers by fire, the God who sends the rain, and the God who can turn the hearts of a nation. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that brings these powerful ancient stories to life. See you next time.